It is the week of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. I can't do it, Tim, but I'm thrilled about it and I'm excited about it. And Ferrari is bringing a big old upgrade in front of their home fans, which is spectacular. We love that at Imola. The other thing is, we got some splash guards to talk about. We got some other things, and we got to do a bit of a preview of the race now, because Valtteri Bottas of Kick Sauber will be joining us later on in the week. So we're going to have a straight up interview with him, which is a heck of a get, Tim. How did you pull that together?
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, no, they Sauber reached out, I want to say Thursday last week, and asked if I wanted to do an interview with Valtteri, and I said absolutely, and they said he was on here before, and I said let's do this, and that was pretty much it. So
it's pretty simple.
I have a good relationship with him, so it's all good. So yeah, we can take some fan questions. I'm sure we'll put that out on SDPN later on Monday, and we'll ask Valtteri some fan questions and just talk about his season so far, see what he's got planned for next year, and I guess see where the conversation goes. So it'll be fun though. I'm looking forward to it. I love Valtteri. He's great.
I've heard he's just an awesome person. I've never got the chance to talk to him myself, so I'm very much looking forward to this. And I think, Tim, he seems to be having way more fun these days.
Yeah.
He just, after the Mercedes, not that he didn't enjoy Mercedes, but it feels like he's like, I'm going to enjoy my career now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think so, Adam. Like, he does look like he's having a really good time down at Sauber. Like, I think he's just, like, the pressure is just, it's not there anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yep.
Like it was in the past, and he seems a lot more free. He's driving he is driving really well. Like in Miami, I think he was so close to getting points, man. Like it wasn't that far off for him. So it would be a shame not to see him on the grid next year. I think he brings a lot of value to a team.
Yep.
And I think any sort of team that's sort of like rebuilding or is in the back that needs help with development, I think like he is great in that regard, just simply because of the experience that the guy's got at him.
Well, and I know that there's been so much about Kimi Antonelli and Williams and stuff like that. And so, by the way, the rumor mill this morning, I should throw out there. And you can, I know. I love you. I know that you love this. The rumor mill is hilarious. So the rumor mill says that Red Bull is going to keep Checo for Carlos Sainz, that Mercedes offered Carlos Sainz a 1-year deal just for 2025, and that the Audi offer, they now need an answer by Monaco, which is the next race after this one at the end of the month. So whether or not any of that's true, it kind of tracks, right? It makes sense that Mercedes would want to hold off an extra year. And we kind of mentioned it last show, I think it was, but would a return to Mercedes make sense for Bottas if you're trying to keep Antonelli in F2 for one extra year to get him a little more seasoning, to let him win the F2 championship, right? He's only 18. He doesn't need to come up yet. And then the other option is, Tim, and I've been thinking about this one, is if Williams does make a change in their driver program, Alex Albon is under contract till 2025. Wouldn't it be great to have a veteran presence for a guy who is really known for his qualifying? Valtteri is a great qualifier. Would a return to Williams maybe make sense, where, you don't have a rookie in that seat? You have a guy who can probably get you a few extra points each year that you can rely on. You know what kind of driver he is, and has a lot of experience with James Vowles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a smart move too, and we'll see what happens with Logan Sargent. I mean, he's got he does have a longer leash this season. James Vowles still evaluating Logan, still seeing what he does have to offer. You have to remember he is only in his second season of Formula One, and F1 is challenging, man. Like it takes years to start to develop and show what you can really do. Look at Yuki Tsunoda. He's a perfect example of that. And I think for Williams, if it doesn't end up working out with Logan, I don't necessarily think that having Kimi Antonelli come into that team makes any sense if you're James Vowles. When you have a team that you're trying to rebuild and get back to the front, you need experience. So yes, Valtteri Bottas would make a ton of sense at that team for next season as well, for sure, Adam.
Mm-hmm. And listen, there's always the chance he stays with Sauber, right? You know,
100%. Like it could happen for sure. I mean, we'll see what happens with Carlos. I mean, it is no secret, like we have talked about on this podcast. You know, Sauber, Audi really want Carlos Sainz. And I think it just comes down to, again, like what can Sainz get out of the likes of either Mercedes or Red Bull in that length of contract. For Carlos Sainz, I mean, if you see the news that, you know, came out today with, you know, Ferrari basically stealing away, you know, two of Mercedes's, you know, key people in Jerome D'Ambrosio, and then also on top of all that, Adam, you know, they have Loke Serra also going to Ferrari, so everybody following Lewis Hamilton over there, and then you kind of just see that it's like,
well, let's talk about it. I want to know about it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day with these two guys, like I had heard something that both were looking to move elsewhere when we were in Bahrain.
Mm-hmm.
So Jerome D'Ambrosio was a former F1 driver back in the day, and you know, before he moves to Ferrari here, he's previously under Toto Wolff, you know, effective as I want to say like a deputy team principal almost.
Mm-hmm.
And now moving over to Ferrari, he will be answering to Frederick Vasseur, and will be also underneath him in sort of like a deputy team principal sort of a role. And then you've got Loke Serra on the technical side, like very strong, like engineering background with Loke Serra as well. He's a huge part of Mercedes. So he's going to be taking over the head of chassis performance and engineering. He's going to report to Enrico Cardile, and will oversee just a number of different areas within Maranello. So track engineering, aero development, aero operations, vehicle performance. So having these two leave Mercedes and come over, they'll start effective immediately October 1st working for Ferrari. And I think for Jerome D'Ambrosio, I think it was a smart move for him, you know, working under a guy like Frederick Vasseur, where it does look like, Adam, and we've spoke about this before, where Vasseur is really bringing in racing people.
Yes.
Right? He's not bringing in like business-minded people. He's bringing in racing people to help oversee and to take a little bit of pressure off from the top of Ferrari all the way down, sort of to shield sort of the team and make it back into this race and performing organization.
Mm-hmm.
And man, has he done such a great job in scoring these two guys. I mean, they are, you know, again, two key guys from Mercedes, bringing them over. This team, Adam, is just starting to look like, by the time we get to 2026, like just this superpower team.
It sure does. Seems like a bit of an all-star team. Now, there will be pressures that come with that, Tim, because obviously you're you know, Ferrari is John. Why do I forget his last name? CEO, race team.
John Elkann.
John Elkann.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was up late doing an NHL stream last night, so I'm a little bit. I'm just not as sharp as I should be.
We're doing this kind of early, so.
John is you know, navigating the politics of Maranello, which is not easy, right? You could argue that in the way that Renault/Alpine have been held back by their internal politics, Ferrari have been for a long, long time too, right? You don't have a championship since Kimi Räikkönen.
Right.
You had some near misses with Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel and this and that, and it just never came together. I find it really fascinating that this era right now, that they're going, oh yeah, we need race people, right? I think that's a really telling statement, because you do get a lot of business people who think they can be race people, right? And it's very, as we're seeing with Renault at the moment, and I'm going to call them Renault because they're the engine manufacturer for Alpine. They are dealing with that in the worst way, right? The business people took over, they kicked the racing people out, and now they can't race. And for Ferrari, this is a team that in theory should be like this all the time, right? The business is sorted out. Ferrari, Fiat, the whole thing, they got money. So keep that on the car manufacturing side. And what I also find interesting is whenever somebody comes over, people are like, well, they must be going because of Lewis Hamilton, especially from a Mercedes team. And the reality is Fred Vasseur is one of the most connected, well-liked people on the grid. And yes, very likely they're coming over because of, partially because of Lewis. But I also would say because a lot of people are looking at Fred and going, I like what he's got going on.
Yeah.
Right.
1,000,000%, man. I think when we talk about John Elkann, I mean, this is he's a businessman, right? That's what he is. I think, he does have some ties with, he has a degree in engineering and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to actually running a race team, it's different than, running an organization, like running a company that is as large as Ferrari is. I mean, you need the business folks for that, but you need the racing people for the racing team. And I think what Elkann's done is smart, right? He wanted Lewis Hamilton. They want Adrian Newey, right? And so they've gone out and they've been aggressive and they've really attacked the market. I mean, they haven't signed Adrian Newey yet, but who's to say that they won't? But at the end of the day, I mean, he's been smart with allowing the racing people to run the race team. And if you look back at the days of the Schumacher era, the Schumacher dominance, you had Ross Brawn and Jean Todt running everything and basically separating that business from racing. And they did a great job at that. And why do you think they went on to win so many championships and be as dominant as they were? I mean, one, they had a great driver. Two, they built a great team around a great driver, which is what you have to do. And three, they kept a lot of the business out of the racing and out of the race team. Just let them go and dominate. And so it's kind of like really harkens back to that. Adam, Frederick Vasseur coming in steeped in racing, and you have all these guys that he's been bringing in steeped in racing. It just makes a lot of sense. Like it just does. And like he's bringing in big people, man, like big people,
big names. It's exciting. Yeah,
for sure. If you're a Ferrari fan, it's incredible, right?
It's good for the sport. If Ferrari's good, it's good for the sport. It really is. And,
it's true.
It's not good for the sport when the FIA favors Ferrari like they did for years and years and years. Like Adrian Newey was talking about that in his book. I'd finished it, and oh my God, I didn't realize the FIA had a special relationship with Ferrari. But yeah, it's like when the New York Yankees are winning in baseball. It's good for baseball. It is. And if somebody beats the New York Yankees, who are good, then it's even better for baseball, right? So moving on to the Grand Prix itself. Obviously, it's one of the two Italian based Grand Prix. It used to be called the San Marino Grand Prix. It's now obviously we just call it Imola. Added back to the calendar in 2020. A lot of people were so excited to see this track back, and it was only supposed to come back for 2020, Tim. That was it. And then they bring it back, and it's people staying on the calendar.
Yeah.
And people love it. What is it about this course that people have fallen back in love with?
I think the racing is always great there, Adam. Like we've seen some dynamite finishes there. And I posted a tweet about this morning. I remember 2005, Alonso and Schumacher, just they Alonso just won by like hundredths of a second, or tenths of a second, I should say. And then, the 2006 also, same thing. Schumacher won, Alonso second, but the battle that they had throughout the race was incredible. And then 2021 was a remarkable race. Remember, with Hamilton and Verstappen and two of them collide off the start. And oh my God, I think Hamilton spun out in that race at one point and somehow, if I'm remembering this correctly, got onto the podium.
Yes.
And so, I mean, the races there have been remarkable. The drivers absolutely love it. I've driven there in the past. Absolutely love the track, to drive on. It's incredible feeling when you string one together. It's very flowing. You get a good rhythm going. So the drivers love it. The teams love it. The area that it's in is beautiful. So if you're a fan and you get to go to that race, it's incredible there. not far from where Ferrari's home base is as well. So you get tons of Tifosi showing up at the same time,
and they're a riot. They're so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And so it's just all around, Adam. It's a good venue to have a Formula One race at, for sure.
I want to go through some of the names that I'm looking at here that won the San Marino Grand Prix, and just speaks to how illustrious it is. Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, and it's Prost, Mansell, Senna, Prost, Mansell, Senna, and then it's Schumacher, Hill, Coulthard, Schumacher, Ralph Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, like really great, amazing names. And then, of course, since then, it's Lewis Hamilton and then Max Verstappen 2 times. They're just some of the greatest racers of all time. This is one of those tracks where the best of the best stand out and the best of the best perform. Nothing against Riccardo Patrese, but I ignored his name because, good driver, but not at the top echelon, I wouldn't think. But there are some pretty amazing drives in this track. And Tim, one of the things that I think if you're Tifosi is that you're going to love is that this is supposed to be where Ferrari bring their huge upgrade. Oh, yeah. This is the day that they think, okay, we might be able to fight mano a mano with Verstappen and Red Bull.
Yep. 100%. I mean, seen some pictures floating around online of when Ferrari was doing their wheel guard testing, which we'll get to in a minute. When they were doing that, it looks like they've put some of the upgrades on that car, and I believe they were running the F175, if I'm not mistaken. And just interesting to see a few developments with it. I mean, I don't think like the entire like upgrade is on this thing, but what I do think is on there that's quite interesting is the bodywork and side pods and the air intake and just how that has actually sort of shifted. It's starting to, starting to look a little Red Bull-y, Adam, but I mean, you got to copy your competition. You got to do it, man. And so I've always been impressed so far this season with Ferrari simply because they haven't brought any real major updates to the car, like really nothing. And they've been competitive with Red Bull the whole way through. And, Red Bull has brought, they've brought some decent size upgrades. I believe it was Japan. They brought some decent size stuff to there, and they're still running it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ferrari can do with the upgrades that they bring. Frederick Vasseur basically tempered my expectations, let's call it, when I was talking to him. So,
right. Why did he temper them? What is it?
I may have gotten a bit excited about it. I think he kind of just like, all right, let's calm down a bit. Let's just put this into perspective here. We're bringing some upgrades. We'll see what happens, kind of deal. But I mean, the drivers seem very excited about it. I mean, Carlos Sainz telling me that like massive updates coming, going to bring quite a bit of performance. And I think when they say massive gains, we're talking tenths of a second. And I think we're going to be seeing that, Adam, in the race. Not so much like in qualifying, because I think they're starting to figure out the fact that like, qualifying is important, but the racing and the tire deg and making the tire last is more important. And we need to focus on that. And so they've really done that this season. So yeah, like I was saying, if they've been able to stick by Red Bull fairly close in some of these races, you bring a big update like this, we'll see what happens. I mean, McLaren, remember McLaren, Adam? McLaren brought that huge update for Miami.
Yes.
And that was like, that's a totally different car now. That's like I was saying, it's like a B spec car and fastest car in the race. Before Max had some floor damage, before all of that, like Norris, he was faster than anybody throughout the entire race from start to finish. So really, I think
we have a three-way fight this
I was
weekend.
Just going to say, like, really with a big update from Ferrari, if they get it figured out in time, I think it's smart that they bring it to Imola. They get the 3 practice sessions. They don't have a sprint thrown in there where they have to worry about, getting ready for that. They can just worry about focusing on the car that they have and seeing what the updates are doing and how can they make it better throughout the race weekend. And that, I think, is key, and that's why I think they waited as long as they did.
Well, I'm really excited, and I think the fans are too. Now, one thing that people were a little bit perplexed by was the rain slick covers that Ferrari were testing this weekend, or this past week, excuse me. And the whole idea, I guess, behind this, Tim, is to improve visibility in the rain so they can race in more intense rain, without having to postpone or wait on Grand Prix. I'm specifically thinking they should call these just the spa tires. Because or the spa covers, because it's always Belgium. What do you think that they learned from having those on the Ferraris? They are weird little covers on the on the tires themselves. Will it actually help things?
This is something they've been experimenting with, Adam. This would be the second year of it. Last year, they experimented with wheel guards that basically, when you had torrential downpour and you still wanted to race, you basically bring the cars in and the crew would be able to slap these wheel covers on top so it would reduce some of the spray. But they tested that at Silverstone. I believe it was following the British Grand Prix. And it was Mercedes was one of the key ones, with Mick Schumacher testing it. And basically what they were doing, they wet down a section of the track and they soak it down and then slap the wheel guards on, send the cars out and see how the spray is. And then they measure it. It sounded like the wheel guards that they had developed for that test, they didn't really work. It was still getting a lot of rooster tails, visibility behind, still not the greatest. And then they go and they test again at Fiorano with Ferrari, the wheel guards there. They developed a really enclosed. If you go online and you can just Google this, but I mean, basically it's like these boxes they've put over top of the entire wheel. And I'm looking at this thing being like, come on, man. What are we doing here? Okay. Like that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Of course.
I mean, again, if it helps with visibility, if it helps with safety, you have to do it. I'm just curious to see, Adam, how it stops rooster tails forming from underneath the car, because they are ground effect cars. So it's going to pull the water up and the diffuser is essentially going to just suck all that out. And once it does that, it fires it into the air. It's got nowhere else to go. So you still will get that. I just curious to know if these wheel guards helped reduce some of that spray, and we'll probably learn more of this later this weekend from their test. But I think it's a great idea. I think whatever they're going to have to come up with, Adam, I think it has to be a solution where you can easily put it on and take it off. And I think that's going to be the important part, as well as obviously taming down rooster tails and spray. Absolutely.
Well, it's you know what? There was a time where the halo on the car seemed to be anathema, right? And now it's clearly saved lives.
For sure.
So if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
I remember I've raced in open wheel cars without the halo when I was racing, and there were no wheel guards and things like that, and man, we would race in sometimes some conditions that even as a driver you were just we should not be doing this right now. Yeah. And I've been in situations just at Watkins Glen, I want to say 2003, I want to say, going up through the S's at the Glen in torrential downpour, and all of a sudden the car turns 90 degrees towards the wall, because it was like a flowing river through the S's, and I was going as flat out as I possibly could. I was racing, right? I mean, I was I'm okay, if we're doing this, I got to do this, so I got to do it. And scary as hell. Yep. Couldn't see the cars in front either because there was so much spray. Anyway, so the car's pointed 90 degrees, and then all of a sudden the rain sort of stops because the rooster tails aren't in my face anymore, and I'm staring directly at a guardrail. And I'm oh my God, this is going to be absolutely massive, and I don't know if I'm going to survive this. And the car is still sliding, and then it just corrects itself, and I'm back going down the straightaway, foot flat to the floor, and I'm whoa.
Tim,
Okay, we just missed one there, and let's keep going.
Well, and that's what you have to do. I mean, that track specifically has a ton of elevation changes too.
Oh, a huge amount.
Like unless you're there, you don't really realize how much it lifts and then crests and then goes down, and it's very, very it's in a very aggressive track, especially through the corners, and a very, very fast straightaway too.
It was so much like sometimes you'd be in so much rain in different races in Formula cars that you're literally like, I wish I had a windshield wiper along my visor, because even if you can't take your hand off the wheel to do this, because it's just going to smear everything. It's going to make everything worse, and all the junk that's on your hands is going to smear onto the tear off, and you're going to waste a tear off. And it's sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. You can't see anything, but you still got to just commit to everything. And it can be a very frightening thing. So if they're able to find ways of like taming all that stuff down, I'm all for it for sure.
My fondest memory of Watkins Glen, by the way, is I used to go with my dad every year to the vintage car race there in early September. And they have a category for Mini Cooper. What's hilarious about them is there's like 40 of them, because they're not expensive to run, and they come down the straightaway and they go into the first corner and nobody downshifts. It's just sounds about right. Flat out, and then flat out around the corner too.
And they're probably like almost up on like two wheels.
Yes.
And oh man, that's a riot.
And these guys are just hobbyists, right? They're just guys that are like, listen, I always wanted to race. I never could. I was fairly successful in my career, and I bought a Mini Cooper. And so they're not professional race car drivers, but very, very funny. So Tim, lastly here, I want to know, because we're going to talk to Valtteri next in the next show. I want to know who you think does. Obviously, we assume that Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull are going to be the fastest cars at this race. Which driver do you think will benefit the most from just the way that this race is set up? Who are we looking at? Obviously, Max Verstappen's good at every racetrack, but what do we think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when it comes to like Red Bull, you have to go with Max. But when it comes to like, I would say this is probably going to be a place where Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are going to be, very close between the two of them. I think with Lando, I think he's going to be fast here. The only reason I say that is because, and this isn't to say that Oscar Piastri isn't. I think Piastri is one of the stars of the future. I just think like the confidence that Lando is going to have from getting your first race win will be huge, and I think he is going to be. I think he could be mighty at this track this weekend, Adam, if they're able to roll out of the garage with just the right setup that they can just tinker and get it into the right window for him. I think he can be very, very fast here.
Oh boy.
I know you're excited. Tim. You're like, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
let's get another win.
Like McLaren.
Hey, listen, as a McLaren fan, I've seen 2 wins in the last 12 years. So a third might be nice.
I mean, it depends. I'm like, do you count? Like, where do we put Piastri's win in Qatar? Like,
well, you know what? You're right. I like. Listen, the sprint race is not a Grand Prix, but I do count that as a victory. Right. So Grand Prix victories are separate. I understand that, but yes, that was a huge sign that things were going the right way.
Yeah, I think so, and I think no one has talked a ton about that, and I think they probably should, because if we're gonna do sprint races and we're gonna put points to that, then that has to qualify somewhere, and we can't take that away from Oscar and what he's done.
Well, and I'm sure that at a certain point we'll start to talk about the drivers who have dominated sprint races and how much that's added to their Grand Prix points, right? I bet the sprint races eventually, when people are actually battling Max, are going to be the thing that separates one driver from a championship and gives it to another.
Yeah, good point.
So
I think I'm excited, Adam. Like, obviously, not only the drivers' championship, but I'm excited for like the constructors' championship, because I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people may think. Right? Like, if we take a look at, I would say how much McLaren gained in terms of performance from their upgrade that they brought. And then we're going to see obviously what Ferrari, the performance that they get from their upgrades. And Red Bull is not that far ahead. Like they're 239 points in the constructor standings. Ferrari's second. They're about 187, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then McLaren's third. They're like 124. So it's not a huge gap, right? You get both drivers operating at a very high level. Something happens to Max or something happens to Sergio, and then you have two drivers that are maybe in podium contention or maybe even a race victory in second place, and boom, you're in there, right? You're in that. And so, like, again, Frederick Vasseur, basically putting down my excitement.
Yeah.
I did that again to him, where I was just like, okay, well,
yeah.
What do you think about winning this constructors championship? Okay, well, we got to keep our feet on the ground here, And
like a true leader.
I think but I think like if the upgrades work, as the season rolls along, if they're able to find more performance, bring more updates to the car, then and keep it close. And why can't we be talking about Ferrari challenging Red Bull for P1 in the constructors?
Oh, that would be exciting. That'd be great. We love that.
Right. We don't know, right? We just don't know.
We don't know. Now, Tim Hauraney, we will catch up again with Valtteri Bottas later this week. But I hope that you have a good start to the week. And we've got a Grand Prix week. We're racing this weekend. I'm so excited.
Woo! Let's go.